issues.
Thank you, Chair.
And guide us.
With the coming in of the Kenya Kwanza government, IGRTC demanded that they needed 98 million to be able to finish the exercise of separation and allocation of all functions and equipment. With that money, I think was provided, but and the IGRTC went further ahead to gazette, which was then pulled down again, and we are now in the same situation that we were. We were focused on ensuring that we have devolved all the functions, plus also this matter. There was the element which is still pending of paying for valuation, because we ended up realizing it was going to be a very huge burden to counties, and it was, our proposal was that it be taken over by IGRTC. We are still stuck at that. Maybe this is one of the reasons why we are stuck where we are, unless, I don't know, because I may benefit from the presence of many accountants and auditors. Is it allowed to use estimated values? Because we could simply go to our hospitals and find, we know what is our land, give it value, that, you know, because if we have to meet what we have just been asked to do by the auditors, then that would mean, considering we have to provide money to do valuation, we may not have the money, but is it an acceptable accounting principle to have values that are estimates? Because if we could, I think that would solve the problem, and we progress, and then correct the values as we progress.
Senator Eddy.
Governor, I wished that for this particular question, you are the one who responded.
Yes.
Because you have really hit what the question really wanted. Like the issue here, you know, whether you are on cash or accrual basis, you are using these assets, and at the end of every financial year, you want to look at, for instance, if the vehicle has a problem, has a breakdown, who finances the servicing of that vehicle? It is you. It has got nothing to do with the previous owner. So yes, the previous owner is substantive to the extent of having the deeds, the relevant deeds, transferred to the county. But in terms of operation, and the accountants, you are disappointing the governor. Are you an accountant? Are you in good standing? That one is Tabitha to look at. This is the thing. Governor, I wanted to advise. I'm just going to give you an advice. Perhaps auditors will give better advice than me. But I'm just giving a financial practice advice. You see, this thing you're being asked accountants to develop called financial statements. I'm begging you, for the sake of Nyeri, make them make sense to you first, not to the governor, to you as a practicing person, because you are either operating with the assets that you own, or you are operating with assets that you don't own. If you don't own an asset, you must have an arrangement with the owner, even if they haven't given it to you. In a classical private sector, you'll either be having this thing in terms of a lease. And lease could be real or not. So you can have an operating lease or a capital lease. One of them is whereby you are hoping that you'll eventually be able to own those assets. And therefore it's like a purchase, you are paying for them so that eventually you'll own them. But others is you are renting them in perpetuity. That is the only way you can be able to account for their usage in your books. So what the government is talking about is very important. You must be able to run a register, and in that register you must have values of these assets. Whether you're not going to estimate it or actually do a proper valuation, that is up to the government to determine depending on the cost that's going to arise. But you cannot assume that because you're using them and they're not owned by you, they don't have value. That's the fundamental issue. So I think my advice, Chair, is that whichever means you're going to use, determine value of these assets, so that by the time you are doing your financial statement at the end of the year, they can be able to have a good reflection of how much they are costing you to have in their books. Because by my view, Chair, and we've had this in a number of issues in municipalities that were I've been acquiring some of these assets. My view is this, Governor. If this process of transition takes too long, and then at the end of it you are getting some dilapidated assets that won't even help you, you should be able to sit as an executive and say, this and this asset we will take, but this and this will even be too expensive for us to dispose, right? At a time that this deal will be done, but you have a basis that you actually did value them and quantify them. So I think that the valuation question is the biggest question here. And that is something that I might not have the authority to tell you that go and use the money for the counties to do the valuation or to estimate. I think there is an advice on that. But whichever means possible, the value of those assets must reflect here.
Yeah, I think you have guided well. That I think, Governor, you need to put in place a mechanism to value these assets, have them transferred, because these assets are helping you run the hospitals. They are generating money for you, so they cannot just be left undetermined for long. That will imply that your financial records are not reliable, because a critical component of your financial record is not determined, and his ownership is not determined. So the statements are not reliable. That's what it implies.
Thank you, Chair. I think we are well guided, but let us also agree in this meeting that we shall have three sets. There are those fully owned by the county, which I bought or somebody else bought. There are those that have been transferred, and that there are those that we are using whose ownership is still in doubt, so that we have those three sets of equipment. And we also agree, let's give them some value. Let's give them some value, regardless of whether it is the actual, it is whatever, it will be, considering that even in, you are the accountants, I think there is something you call devaluation and whatever, all these things, depreciation, all these kind of things. My thinking is that we shouldn't just stick there and wait for IGRTC. For your information, Chair, IGRTC is now not even concerned about that. It is concerned about getting more power and getting COG out of the way. You have seen what they have brought in your office. So I think you better focus. Let's look at it and see. They don't want to. In fact, they want to become the Secretariat of Governors. If you remember, there was this issue about removing COG from the funding of the Exchequer and all those kind of things. So those IGRTC seems to be now not walking in the direction that they should, and seem to be walking backwards and clawing back on what we
devolution.
have. So,
Yeah, clawing back on devolution. Just quick.